Guys, hope you're well. I just wanted to post a quick little late night video just to talk about that I've been reading each and every comment and absorbing all of them, and I wanted to talk about it, what I learned from this experience, kind of just a quick rundown after I've had a couple days to kind of digest everything, take in the good, the bad, the ugly, the support, the hate, and of course the many comments in between. So not a ton of, it might be a strange thing for me to do. Not a ton of creators have entire videos where they're just talking about and addressing specific comments or want to clear up a few things. But I figured it would be nice to have a conversation, and I don't want to be a dead horse. So obviously I'm going to move on with my content and cover other topics, whether it be politics, whether it be interviews with people in the Scientology community. So still full steam ahead. But yeah, wanted to talk about all the comments that kind of came in and also clarify some confusion. So first we'll clarify some confusion. I released a video that a handful of people found to be whiny. And that was immediately after I posted my interview with Mitch Brisker. Well, not immediately, but that was about 12 hours after I posted the live with Mitch Brisker. I woke up, and all of a sudden, I lost about 500 subscribers. Now, that's only, 50 subscribers, and I have to be careful with the numbers. Now, that's only 50 subscribers. At that point, I had about 6,300 subscribers, and I misspoke. I said 600, 300, but I meant 6,300. So it wasn't that huge of a loss at the end of the day, but it certainly was a noticeable loss. And I found it was strange, and a lot of comments noted, more recent comments noted, that I seemed to be blaming Aaron or Aaron's supporters specifically because I didn't feel like there was that much of a feud. At that time, I didn't. Obviously, things have certainly changed, so that's a whole different conversation, and I'm not necessarily going to wade into that whole one. But at that point, what I had seen on the comments of my live stream with Mitch, remember, this is before Nora did her live stream, and I learned a lot of the extra information that I should have been aware of, but that I was not aware of. Specifically, of course, I was aware of the children with the Sea Org, but I certainly didn't push back against Mitch nearly as much as I should have. And I was completely unaware of the comments with Miriam Francis. So there were certainly, and a few other key points. So there's certainly a lot of key points that I still was yet not aware of when I released the video 12 hours later, kind of, as some people say, whining about losing subscribers. So I do want to say that, yet again, I was under a relatively incorrect impression because all the comments just said, hey, I don't like Mitch. And there were no specifics. It wasn't, I don't like Mitch because of these specific comments that he made to this victim. I don't like Mitch because he's not telling the truth about what is currently happening in Scientology and what happened in the very recent past. So I assumed it was because most of the Aaron's, and I assumed incorrectly, obviously, at this point, but I assumed that it was because most Aaron Smith Levin fans saw the one video that says my beef with Mitch Brisker. I watched that video. It seemed like they were kind of ribbing each other and actually having fun, and they seemed to be friendly enough. And I assumed people saw that video and didn't like Mitch and all of a sudden unsubscribed from me. And I thought, well, man, that's a bit of a bummer because I don't even think that there's even a feud in the first place. So I don't get that. So I felt like it was this, was it people jumping to conclusions based on one video? And yes, was I whiny in a sense because I wanted to remind people that they might dislike this one person, but I do hope that they ultimately appreciated that I put my job on the line when I was a news reporter, news anchor, to expose the truth about Scientology, and that I've gone to LA to cover the preliminary motions of the trial for Aaron, as well as going to Chicago to protest. And in terms of following a journalistic path, and some people have commented that I'm no journalist at all, and hey, I respect that, but I felt like I did provide some unique journalism aside from Scientology, going to New Hampshire and covering the primaries in South Carolina as well. And South Carolina and New Hampshire, as well as Georgia, as well as covering the primary in Georgia and the rallies over there. To the guys who follow me for politics, I'm sorry about all this mumbo-jumbo Scientology stuff, and that's going to be an interesting experiment for my YouTube. is, can you even get away with talking about two separate topics? And speaking of which, that's I wanted to address how I researched the Mitch video and kind of clarify that in a more thought out way, away from doing a mutual dialogue in the street. So I wanted to kind of clarify how I did my research and what I missed. So as I mentioned, I do like covering other topics. I consume a ton of Scientology content, but there's some days where I haven't, and there's some days where I'm focusing on the primary, and there's some days where I'm just watching other videos about other topics. I understand many in this community, because they're so committed to the fight against Scientology, are consuming perhaps 3 to 4 to 5 hours of content of this daily. So they're really in the know in a way that, in all fairness, I should have been in the know when interviewing somebody who has a significant role in this community. But I will say that, as a commenter noted, and I appreciated it, there's only so much you could consume and even know where to look. And that was the big thing, was like even know where to look. So I listened to the entire redacted Mitch Brisker interview. Obviously, that would be a positive piece because the redacted people are not solely about Scientology. That was their only interview about the topic. And then I watched, and this is where my neglect comes in, and quite frankly, my laziness. Many of you think I'm flawed beyond redeemability, but hey, I'll be the first to admit you that I'm flawed. So take from that what you will. I listened to that interview, and I listened to about the first 20 minutes of Nora's bit. I should have listened way further because there was a lot more substantive information that I should have had going into that interview. But the initial conversation was about Mitch being way too self-promotional at the Los Angeles protest. I felt like that wasn't that big of a deal. So again, that video posting that I posted about 2 days ago, where I'm asking people to stay subscribed, that was the information that I had in hand at the time. Now, of course, there was a 12-hour gap. Also should have looked and known to look again at Nora's piece. But before that, I didn't know all this additional information. Of course, when Nora commented, which I thought was very interesting, that she'll do a video, I was kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I'll check out more of her videos. And then I was pretty much fully aware of the many, many, many things I missed. And of course, the opportunity that for some understandably say I quite blew. Of course, other people understand, other people say and support, and you can make your own conclusion, that I gave him enough space and was friendly enough for him to really express the way he feels. And for somebody who really knows Scientology far better than I ever would, Nora, to be able to have that information that he's given out and be able to analyze it effectively, for it to be on the table and for there to be a platform for that information to be on the table is, better done than not, right? So, I fall in the middle of that opinion, where I'm glad I interviewed him. And some comments said I did come in with enough questions to really, again, get him talking in a way where people would be interested in hearing what he had to say about certain key issues. So at least I felt like I did that effectively. Of course, there was a substantive amount of information that I did miss. And so I would fall in the middle of everything. A lot of people recognize that I was willing to say where I was sloppy, and willing to say that I messed up in a significant way. I mean, not that I'm going to beat myself up or I'm deeply apologetic, but I should have certainly pushed back. End of story, right? And I want to also take in this criticism and absorb, again, the comments, whether they be the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I also want to give a shout out to Nora. So I found Nora's comment, and then I processed a lot of what I had missed, and then of course participated in the live stream, and she participated in my live stream, which is really fun to have her, and I hope to get her on. I have some more videos to watch. I watched Marilyn's video, which was helpful information, and so it was good to have a lot of that with me, and so I felt much more informed, especially doing the subsequent live. So I think if people saw my full live and what I said in the comments that I addressed, and they realized that the so-called whiny video was the day before, as a lot of people have commented, my perspective is quite different as I had gotten more informed by the point of my live stream. And of course, I'm even going to do a more formal video where I pick apart each, more of the things I got wrong in detail. So we'll certainly talk about that. But yeah, and then and I want to thank Nora for being really classy and just defending me from some of the more aggressive comments. And again, I'm not her, and I didn't need anybody to defend me, but I appreciate her remarking that while I should have come better prepared, there was some good, and the focus is on Mitch. So and she kind of went out of her way to do that. So I appreciate it. So at the end of the day, a lot of people are asking, a handful of people asked me, do I feel hurt? And it's kind of funny. And I thought, well, why? Because, I'm in the middle of this scene, and my subscribers are growing, right? So I don't know why I'd be terribly hurt. But yeah, I want to just remark, because there are a handful of people who I think might think I'm doing worse than I'm actually doing. And first off, I want to thank. It's funny when you get negative comments, and I want to say that the negative comments were about 30% on mine. Nora's stream, which you'd have a lot less people supported. That was probably 45 against me, 55. Pretty understanding or even supportive of my actions, right? So you mesh that all together. And then there's comments on Mitch's stream, which is why I didn't think I didn't do that bad of a job, because there are people criticizing me for not pushing back on Mitch enough, and there are people who are Mitch's allies who are criticizing me that I constantly interrupted him. So, if both sides are criticizing you, then perhaps if for somebody that's following the mission of objectivity, you might have done something right at the end of the day. So I want to talk about this. So I want to mention that. But yeah, so want to talk about kind of how I'm feeling, and feeling totally fine. And I do say, so it's interesting. So everybody gets very bogged down in maybe that ultimately 30% of negative comments, which means 70% kind of understood that I owned up to what I owned up to, that there was some good material. So it's so funny that the narrative of a 30% negativity rate kind of becomes what people think is the general feeling amongst the commenter. Your eyes will always zero in on the most negative, zany, vitriolic, noticeable comments, and that will be in a minority. But some people have interpreted them, understandably, as me interpreting them as the majority feeling of people's thoughts post-interview. So I know that's not true. Look, if it's generally 70%, 30%, and listen, about a third of those I clicked, so I've looked at each and every comment. About a third of those I've clicked, and I clicked the person, and they follow the Stans League, and the Stans League is an organization, a front organization in support of Scientology, who I'm honored to say has attacked me before on their Twitter page. So a third of them, are obviously the Office of Special Affairs, so you throw away about a third of them anyway, and then it gets to be about 20-25%. So can I handle it? Yeah, and look, I was a news anchor for quite some time, and it's funny because as a news anchor, nobody cares about you or says anything, but they will email you if you suck. So whenever I threw up on myself metaphorically, I would always get an email saying how much they hate me, and how ugly I am, or how awkward I pronounce words, or how I have no charisma or presentation skills. And it's funny because when you're a news anchor, you hear the bad, but you really never hear the good. So this is very nothing, and this is heartwarming that, again, 65, 70% generally are either giving me a pass or appreciating that I'm taking in both sides and having a conversation, and that there's nothing wrong, that there's perhaps a lot of division, and there's nothing wrong with connecting with people on opposing sides as long as those people have valuable stories to share. So, would I have never had Mitch on had I not known any of this? No, I still would have had Mitch on. I still very much would have, and may have in the future. I hope to have Nora on in the future. So yeah, but it's funny. But it's especially I've noticed people who are relatively new on YouTube and haven't done the weird anchor stuff. Is a handful of negative comments, and I've read them and had fun with them. So I don't think I need to go over the specifics of them. Although I certainly can I'll have a few on my phone, so maybe I'll take a look at a few of them. But that these negative comments, they focus on it, and they think that's the general feeling, and they really, I'm not losing sleep, or I'm not personally hurt. Perhaps I'm bothered by some of the ones saying just quit entirely for about 1 minute or something. But again, for every one of those comments, there's 5 that says keep going. And it's fun because the heartwarming part about this, and the kind of warrant that you never thought you'd get is the beautiful support of the people who have consistently been following you and have been confirming that they like your content. Because a lot of people, not a lot of people, about 4 people said they just don't like my content. They think I'm too disorganized. They think I'm sloppy. They think I'm unprofessional. Fair argument. They felt like I've made too many mistakes. Other people, to contrast that, would say they like that I'm relatable. They like that I'm human. They like that I'm not overly upset and conscious about my self-image, and I'm the first person to address a mistake that I made, and I'm the first person to talk about it. They like that the lives are kind of just like a chat with friends and shooting the shit. And some people like that I'm not this buttoned up, even though I might appear that visually I'm not this buttoned up type A personality. And that's, you know, that's whatever floats your boat. But I will say that the heartwarming part about this is you develop, if your YouTube is small enough, I suppose, you develop, big enough and small enough, you develop a relationship with your audience, and you have these MVPs that are kind of always on your side, whether it be Classy Carrie, whether it be John Beach, whether it be Anathema Fox, whether it be Rosebud Amy. I'm missing many, many, many people. God, there's one that made a whole bunch of, she starts with a D, and I want to shout her out because she's been my biggest supporter. So I am looking at some of the comments, because I do want to give one person a shout out. But, you know, while I'm talking about that and while I'm looking in the comments to give some people shout outs, just a completely random segue. One thing that I did inappropriate that I do want to address, and I addressed in the live stream as well, is laughing at the suggestion when the auditing happens with the 14-year-old, laughing about the you know, physical atrocities with the dog. And I apologize. And that was inappropriate, and that is potentially re-traumatizing for somebody. I apologize. That was a reflex. And you got to, me as never in, I was putting, the reflex came from putting myself as a 14-year-old. If I heard that as a 14-year-old, if I had nothing to do with Scientology and I wasn't traumatized and I wasn't brainwashed, I would have found that funny as a 14-year-old. Obviously, somebody, a child doing, giving auditing, that's a completely different situation, and I was completely insensitive to that. But the reflex was, if me as a 14-year-old heard it, I would be laughing. So that the reflex was like, my God, like it was so insane, like a 14-year-old would find that funny, but not obviously when they've been through trauma and they're being told to say this. But yeah, it was obnoxious, and that's, you know, I blatantly, you know, very much apologize for that. That was a bad look. And that was a bunch of comments, too, saying they didn't like that I laughed. And I get that. And Nora gave a good defense for that, which I appreciate, and says, again, it's like, it's the reflex, and it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre to me, who's never been in Scientology. That's not a normal topic. I haven't heard anybody say that sentence ever, really. So it's, you know, a reaction to the bizarre as well. So I appreciate her. I appreciate her recognizing that. But it, you know, again, it is a relationship with these people, and I appreciate everybody who's. You said that I do some good content and like what I do, and listen, as somebody in YouTube, the biggest thing is taking this criticism, and of course, I obviously want to build from it, and a lot of you have kind of split the middle, and Mrs. Denuzio, you're the one I wanted to give a shout out to. I appreciate it. You've been like an army of one, so thank you. Hopefully you'll see this. But yeah, I mean, I won't go over all the many comments. To say I'm personally hurt, to say I'm traumatized, to say I'm offended, no. You know, what I try to do from the most negative stuff, if they're not absolutely hilarious, if they're hilarious, I'll just read them. But what I try to do for the most negative stuff, honestly, is glean what's the rock of truth in it, right? Just like what's the rock of truth in all the positive comments, because there's truth in both, right? I'd like to think there's more truth due to my arrogance and my ego in positive comments, but you know, there could be more truth in the negative comments as well. So you have to have a thick enough skin to do it. As for some comments saying I'm not a journalist because I'm not doing anything new, you know, okay, it helps in numbers, but if you want to unsubscribe, you could certainly do that. One last thing, a lot consternation on the politics. The politics stuff, I lost a lot of subscribers doing politics. So to say that I'm only worried about subscribers and only doing this for subs, listen, I cover the primaries, man, and that did not get a lot of attention. It got some nice support, and it got its own niche audience, and I gained a fair, probably if I have 6,000 subscribers, 400, 500 of them are from the political, nothing to do with Scientology segment. So it's still a chunk. Most of them know me and know the way I deal with the Trump rally. So a fair amount of, about 3 people said they unsubscribed from me because they said it was MAGA. I'm not MAGA, did not vote for Trump, am not voting for Trump. Voted for Joe Jorgensen in 2020, I'll be, I covered the Trump rallies, and the Trump rallies are the rallies that got the most amount of views because he's the most controversial figure. And of course, in the Trump rallies, I want to be sympathetic. And I think you'll notice that I do have an ingratiating style and perhaps an overly accommodating style. I'm always the guy, if we're talking, then I'm kind of on your side in a lot of ways. And that's just I guess I'm less non-confrontational in a lot of ways and more of an observer. So that's another educational thing, man, is like, it's fun for you guys to guide me who are actually invested very much, even more so than I am. And I'm making this content and I'm involved in this content. But it's great to get an education from you, not only information that I need to know, but how I could research things properly. Who are the modern day YouTube talking heads? Who are the authoritative subject on this issue? If I listen to an interview with Mitch, who is the authoritative anti-Mitch? And I will tell you, I'm going to have Alex Barnes-Ross on, and we're going to have an interesting conversation, and we're going to talk about a lot of topics. Only one of the topics will be addressing some of the criticism. So this time, I've looked at the good, the bad, and the ugly, so I feel certainly better prepared. And I do appreciate it, even the ones that are purely negative for negative sakes. I appreciate the guidance and the awareness of how I could be better. Now, for some, I've messed up too much, and my opportunity, again, for redemption is gone with them, and c'est la vie. But again, I gained a bunch of new subscribers out of this whole situation, so, am I upset it happened in the first place? Not at all. I'm glad it did. And to talk from a cynic's perspective, controversy is not a bad thing to be involved in. It gets views, and obviously that will guide into some more serious stuff. And controversy isn't necessarily always a bad thing. Some of the truth needs to be hashed out, and we need to understand and have an accurate picture of what the recent history of Scientology was. And some of this back and forth clarifies it. So not bad at all. And I guess I'll finally close by saying it's been a fun ride. It's been fascinating. It's weird when 3 people are talking about you. There is a bit of a fun, surreal feeling into it. So, yeah, I say don't feel too sorry for me. I'm enjoying the ride. Sure, I'll get some negative comments on this, but again, just wanted to clarify a lot of different things, what I was apologetic for. Again, we'll go over the more specific points, but certainly the laugh, what I'm less apologetic for, and what I thought about the video that many people deemed whiny, why I thought that was legitimate, but why there was also some confusion because they didn't consume the content that was posted after, where I was much more aware of key information I should have been aware of before, and again, probably should have been aware of in that 12-hour gap. So we're going to have Alexander Barnes-Ross, probably close to the time you see this, we're going to have him at 3 p.m. Eastern. So hope you guys have a good one. Take care, and thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.